Well, thank you. I guess as I get further in my time in this position, I'm learning more what my job is. I guess I'm a phone call for you guys if you're having any issues now. So, but who knew? So I was just going to spend a little time, give you a little orientation to the way that some of the roles and responsibilities had fell out last fall. Les Penning, our former Deputy General Manager and COO, moved to take a general manager job for a co-op in Oregon. And as Les transitioned out, there was certainly some roles and responsibilities that we were trying to get a bit better orientation of what was going on there. Who knew what Les did either? But no. So what happened is, as far as the business continuity type of things, as far as Mike in his stead, as far as him needing to be more than one place at a few times through the year, I'll jump in that role. And so I typically find myself in that role anyway. The next part was more on the strategy execution side that Les did. And that has moved over to Doug Wilson, who's our Chief Information Officer. And so Doug is taking in, there he is, Doug, thank you, some of the strategy execution piece. And the next roles, as far as the Chief Operating Officer that Les did, as far as the member service, the engineering, and the operations department, those basically went back to those department heads, and they're doing fine. They were babysitted long enough. Now they can do their own job. No, they do a good job. Actually, it's Mike Pomerane. Is he in the room? There he is. Mike Pomeranes is our, what are you? Assistant Senior VP of our operations department. And then Quentin Rogers. Is he in the room? Quentin Rogers, there he is. He's our Vice President of Engineering. And so that's our role. And then I think Joanne, she didn't do much of Les's role, but Joanne is our Chief Financial Officer. So, the last guy that I left out certainly took up a large part of what Les did in working with economic development, and certainly one of our biggest pieces of our community presence is our PreCorp Foundation. And Jeff Baumgardner is the Vice President of Member Service, but also runs or chairs the foundation board. And so certainly has had to learn a lot on the run, but no better talent than Jeff to do that. So Jeff, why don't you come on up and we'll transition to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. You notice he jacked that up on me. Not for the short guy coming up next. Yeah, Les left. Les was key and instrumental in helping bring me to Powder River Energy. And then he immediately turned around and went to Oregon, where I came from. So I told him that it wasn't a situation where you had to move people out in order to move people in, but he wasn't quite believing that. So no, I do head up your member service area at Powder River Energy, and as Brian mentioned, some sundry other duties with economic development, which we're looking at, trying to help with the governor's issue and help diversify the economy here, see if we can take some of these boom and bust cycles down a little bit. And of course, I have the pleasure of being the executive director now of the PreCorp Foundation, and that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. So, as many of you know, the cooperative has had a long history of charitable giving. And back in 2007, your board of directors established the foundation to sort of extend that arm and to try to make a bigger difference, even bigger difference in the communities that we serve. Your foundation is comprised of a director from each county and up to 5 at-large directors, and that's our governance structure. And there are a few of those folks here today, and Mike had introduced them. John Tolkini obviously is the chairman. Susan Berry is the vice president or vice chair, and she's not here, out of Johnson County. Zita Anderson is here and was introduced earlier, right over here. And she's an at-large representative out of Crook County. Mary Yemington is here, and she was introduced earlier. Mary's also in Crook County. Betty Little in Sheridan County, she's not here today. Kathleen Taviji is not here today either. She's our representative from Weston County. Phil Jordan is new to the foundation board. He's an at-large representative for us. And then we, in order to keep the Powder River Energy Foundation Board and the PreCorp board coordinated on activities, we have a liaison between the board, a board-to-board liaison, and Philip Habeck is currently filling that role. So we can't do any of this without that volunteer board. They're fundraisers. They meet every month. They review needs in the community. They work in their communities to identify needs. It's a pretty active role for to be a director on the foundation. And like I said, it's all voluntary, so they're really appreciated the work that they do for all of us. So I think it's important to understand where the money comes from in order for the charitable work that's conducted in our communities. And Operation Roundup, I think some of you are probably quite familiar with it, but it's the program where you can elect to have your electric bill rolled up to the nearest dollar, and that change, anywhere from a penny to 99 cents, would be then put into a fund that is used by the foundation to help fund some of the charitable work. Out of the 28,000 meters that we have, currently we have about 22,000 of those that are participating in Operation Roundup. And so we're getting some really great participation, and for those of you on the program, we thank you very much. And those of you that aren't on the program, we can sign you up. So it's a very good opportunity. Other sources of foundation funding are unclaimed capital credits. On an annual basis, the board will look at unclaimed capital credits and allocate a certain portion of those to the foundation to fund activities. Member donations of capital credits. So we thank you, those of you that received capital credits and are donating those back to the corporation for the foundation. And even your future, people are donating back their future allocations of their capital credits. That's an excellent way to fund that, and we really, really appreciate your contribution in that area. Personal donations. I personally donate every time my phone goes off in a board meeting. It has happened. Anybody else whose phone goes off during a board meeting also contributes, but we also get a lot of personal donations from members as well, and so we thank you for those. There's scholarship funding, which we'll talk about a little bit, and then there's fundraising events that we have every year. And so the first fundraising event is the Apprentice Scholarship banquet that we have in April. And that has been that's been in existence for, I think this was the third year, is that right, Mike? And his team in operations and our line department was really instrumental in that, and then there was a lot of support from across employees in the organization for that event, and it's been raising money for scholarships, and in fact we're starting to give scholarships this year in that program, so that's a very good program. We also have the Durham Ranch Buffalo Stampede Walk and Run in Wright, Oregon, that Mr. Flokini hosts at his ranch. And we have that in June of every year, and that's another fundraising event. We also partnered and have for a few years now with our employees who run a walking taco booth at during the bike rally in August. And I think this year it raised around $2,200, and the foundation matched that. And those dollars were used back into the Cook County this year. And then we have a golf tournament coming up in September at Devil's Tower. And so that's, I think, on the 8th of September. So those are some of the main fundraising events that we use to fund this. So you might ask at this point, once all that money is being raised, where's it all going? And as the slide breaks up there, we have it broken up into three primary categories: education, civic and community, and health and human services. And so in our education would be our scholarships and things that are giving out, and we give about somewhere between 20 and 25 scholarships a year through various things that we'll talk about a little bit later. And then we also have our civic and community, which are things like Climb Wyoming. I don't know if you're familiar with that organization, but it helps single mothers sort of get reestablished on the economic ladder, get jobs, get training, and get out of the poverty situation that some of them find themselves. And then we have Health and Human Services, which are a lot of our food bank donation, things along that line. And I think, as Philip indicated, you witnessed a little bit of that this morning when you came into the meeting. We had the Wyoming Food Bank of the Rockies that were running a mobile food pantry this morning on the other side of so all told, in 2016, a little over $140,000 were distributed to many of these organizations that you might recognize up here. We've got veterans, as I said, the single mothers in need, some child advocacy programs like Bikers Against Child Abuse, and a number of other worthwhile causes. And of course, we do a lot of work during the holidays, big time, with food baskets, Toys for Tots, shopping with COP programs, a lot of the things that without foundation and other community support wouldn't be possible, and certainly wouldn't be as successful. So scholarships, we are, the foundation undertakes the administration of several educational scholarships. In addition to the PreCorp scholarships for our membership, there's also the Apprentice Lineman Scholarship that I spoke of a minute ago. The foundation also administers the Julie and Tony Swanda Agricultural Scholarship, and has for a number of years. The Geis family, Jerry's family, has a scholarship that we also administer, and then we have a Farmers Cooperative Association scholarship. And because of our structure, we're able to administer those and help distribute that. And the foundation board participates in that program. And like I said, all around there's about 20 to 25 educational scholarships that go to deserving students throughout Northeast Wyoming. So it's a fairly good program. This was the check presentation from the rally booth that we just held. And so that went to the Cook County Nursing Home. That was the $2,200 that was raised by the employees at the booth, that was matched by the foundation. And then this ceremony just occurred this last Thursday. So a lot of support for that area. Last I would say is that your foundation is dependent on corporate sponsorships, vendors, personal member scholars or donations, and we thank you for that. It's been growing every year. We're seeing some really tremendous work, and I think it's showing that we're really kind of living that cooperative spirit in terms of giving back to the community and helping strengthen our communities through support. So I thank you for that, and if you would like to get involved in your foundation, we are looking for community ambassadors, or county ambassadors, or community ambassadors. If you're in a unique position where you can help identify needs throughout our counties, and you want to help us address those needs, then an ambassador position is a great role. And you can find out more about that on our Powder River Energy Foundation website, or contact any one of us here that have the badges on. We probably can get you some information on that. So that's it on the foundation report for this year. I have the great pleasure now on the agenda of introducing Grace Anderson from Devil's Tower. Grace is an accomplished daughter of Zita Anderson, one of our foundation board directors, and she'll speak today about her representation of the PreCorp membership, and in fact the state of Wyoming, at the 2016 Youth Camp in Steamboat, Colorado, and then this year at the 2017 Washington, D.C. Youth Tour, where she was selected as the student from Wyoming attending to represent the state. So a very high honor indeed. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Jeff. All right, so I have to just say before we get started that you might see in some of the slides that I show that I have a little different hair color than I have right now, and I just wanted to explain why that is. So I don't know if any of you guys experienced the power outage we had 2 days ago. I went to bed and I had one hair color, and I woke up the next morning and I had another hair color. So that's how that happened, but we can give a round of applause to our linemen for having our electricity up the next morning. Thank you, guys. All right, so one of my favorite sayings is life is full of unlimited possibilities. And you have the choice of whether you decide to act on those possibilities or not. And thanks to the Wyoming Rural Electric Association and Powder River Energy Corporation, I've been equipped with many opportunities to reach my full potential. Now, my journey began last year when I was accepted to attend a cooperative youth leadership camp in Steamboat, Colorado. Now, going into the week, I had no idea what to expect, but I left the week feeling more confident in myself, more knowledgeable about electricity and cooperatives, and like I had strong connections and friendships that I'd built, and that I left a better leader than I was before. It was one of the best weeks of my life, and I highly encourage, if you have a youth or know a youth, to have them apply for this camp because it makes a huge difference in their lives. Now, after CYLC, I found out about an opportunity called Youth Tour. This is a trip to Washington, D.C., where students get to spend a week learning about the history and historical sites in and around our nation's capital. They also get to connect with teens from across the nation, and they learn more about cooperatives and what it means to be a part of an electric cooperative. One of the most serene memories I have from Youth Tour is visiting Fort McHenry in Baltimore, Maryland. It remains one of my favorite places in the DC area. Watching the video about the battle at Fort McHenry and how bravely those men stood and kept their ground despite all odds reminded me of our great country's history. And as I stood on the bank with the cannons to my back and the bay to my front, I couldn't help but close my eyes and think of the words Francis Scott Key wrote so many years before that would later become our national anthem. It was a surreal moment standing there on the bank, looking out over the same waters our American soldiers would have, and I couldn't help but feel more proud to be an American. Another incredible place I was able to explore was the North American Art Smithsonian. Now, to be completely honest, I wasn't very keen on going at first, but I knew my roommate really wanted to go, and so I didn't want to disappoint her. So I decided to give it a shot. It was actually quite amazing, from the architecture of the building to the beautiful gardens inside and the breathtaking artwork by Leonardo da Vinci, Van Gogh, Monet, and more. And last but not least, I was able to go to my first baseball game. From the roaring fans, the summer heat, the amazing funnel cakes, and $5 waters, it was an atmosphere that made me feel quite at home, and one I will never forget. Then I was selected as the delegate for Wyoming to represent our state on the Youth Leadership Council for NRECA. As a delegate, I was able to return to Washington, D.C., where I spent the week with my fellow delegates, attending workshops, learning about the history of NRECA, going to the national headquarters, meeting partners, and giving a speech, along with my fellow delegates, about what we'd learned while on Youth Tour and how the experience had impacted us. I'll share a part from my speech that I feel was one of the most important lessons for me. Leadership is never easy. It's a process. There are growing pains and struggles, but one of the best pieces of advice I have ever been told is this: nothing good has ever come from staying in your comfort zone. Now, let's admit it. Putting yourself out there isn't easy, but there's no such thing as a loser or failure. There are only winners and learners in life. The only time you're a loser is when you don't take anything away from the situation, and you only fail when you can't see the opportunities that have arisen from the slight roadblock you've encountered. As YLC, I will get the chance to attend the NRECA annual meeting in Nashville, Tennessee in February of 2018, and I'm excited to represent electric cooperatives and my home state of Wyoming in such a great capacity. It'll be an exciting time that I look forward to. Now, my biggest takeaway from the many trips I've been a part of is this simple phrase, printed on the back of our Camp YLC t-shirt, the trip that started it all. Because leaders are made, not born. This holds true in so many aspects, and it constantly reminds me that I can always improve and strive to be a better leader in all that I do. I would love to visit afterwards if you have any questions or would like to hear more about my experiences and my different trips. And I'd again like to thank the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association, as well as Wyoming Rural Electric and my sponsoring cooperative, PreCorp, and you as the members. Thank you for this amazing experience, and you've helped my light shine bright like an LED light bulb.